Well, hello everybody. I'm Chris Norman. I'm a technical marketing engineer for Intel. Today I'm going to be talking to you about TIZEN. I have a co-presenter here, Ted Patrick. Can I put your hand up? From Samsung, and he'll also be covering a little bit more information about some of the APIs and the native aspects of TIZEN. Sorry about the projector here. We're having a little bit of syncing difficulties, but I think everything will be able to read on the screen, so hopefully it shouldn't detract from the actual presentation. What I'm going to talk about today, oh, that is going to be annoying, isn't it? Sorry about that. Is give an overview of TIZEN. We're going to talk about the TIZEN SDK for application developers, and then I'm going to pass it over to Ted to talk about how writing applications for TIZEN using Sencha, what the kind of things that you'll encounter and how you get around those. And then we'll wrap up with a summary, and we should have some time at the end for questions and answers. So a quick show of hands. Before this week, who was aware of TIZEN? So 2, okay. 2 or 3. So this is good, because this is why we're here. We actually want to be spreading the word about TIZEN, letting people know that it's coming, start getting application developers writing applications for TIZEN to put in the TIZEN store. So this is good timing for everyone. So the question is, what is TIZEN? So TIZEN is a robust and flexible open source standards-based software platform based on HTML5. It's being targeted for smartphones primarily, but also for in-vehicle infotainment, and also other product categories such as smart TVs, clamshells, other devices like cameras, refrigerators, tablets, notebooks, you name it. And one of the things that we want to make sure is we have is a platform that people can make innovative products out of. So we want to encourage people to build devices based on TIZEN and make really compelling, engaging applications and devices that can really move the industry forward. So we have a vision for TIZEN, and we've categorized it into 4 key pillars, as we'd like to call them. One of the first ones, the key one that I think you're probably aware of from the little you may have heard about TIZEN is we're focusing heavily on HTML5. Obviously, if you want to bring a new operating system into the world these days, you've got to have a lot of applications to go with it, to support it. People want to be able to use whatever applications they're familiar with. And the only way to get that catalog of applications is to use HTML5. So we're making TIZEN OS the best, most compatible HTML5 platform that you could wish for. We want to drive innovations very quickly on HTML5. We want to be able to leverage existing applications out there, and so they just run fine on TIZEN. We want to support the W3C APIs as widely as possible, not just the existing published standards, but also drafts and pre-standards, so that when they become available and published, we're already ready to go. And of course, the ability to use HTML5 means that we can use applications not just in one segment, but also in other segments. So, an application you run on a phone, you can also run on an IVI device, you can also run it on your notebook. The second pillar is that we want TIZEN to be a truly open operating system. And there's several different aspects to a statement like that. One of the key ones is that we're open to other companies to help come in and work on us with TIZEN. So right now, TIZEN is all being driven by Intel and Samsung, but there's no barrier for other companies, other OEMs to come along and start contributing to TIZEN. The only thing that we ask is that those companies contribute the code. We want to have people that are actually developing, writing code for the OS, and the more code you develop, the more say you have in the operating system. But it's not a single a single, it's not controlled by a single company. It's a Linux Foundation project. It's run by a technical steering group. So there are multiple people that are contributing to the OS. And there's no restrictions about the applications and services you can run on it. Other operating systems, other platforms, the environments are very tightly controlled, what you can do in those environments. That's not the case in Tizen. We're actively encouraging people to come out with new and innovative services, use other applications, do great new things with it. And then the third category, innovation and differentiation, which I kind of touched on already. But we want to encourage people as much as we can to innovate, to differentiate, to make unique products that really meet the needs of their end users. And we're also putting in strong, robust developer programs to deliver these apps. So this is part of the evangelism that we're doing here today, is to talk to Sencha developers like yourselves and saying, this is coming down the line. We want you to be a part of it. Obviously, if you're developing an application for the Tizen store, if you get in at the ground floor, you're going to get a lot more visibility for your application than trying to compete in other app stores right now. And then last but not least, wanted to emphasize the support we have from the industry leaders. So we talked a bit about the technical steering group. We also have Tizen Association, which is a consortium of many brand name OEMs and carriers from around the world. And they are putting their weight behind Tizen and supporting us to build up the ecosystem, especially in the geos that they want to bring products out in. And basically, they have the ability to swap out different components at every level of the stack. So if they want to take it off the shelf, use the open source project as much as possible with minimal customization, they can do that. If they want to rip out everything except the web runtime and replace it with their own solutions, they can do that as well. It's very, very flexible from that point of view. So I talked a little bit about HTML5, and I must admit I was chuckling when I heard the BlackBerry guy talking in the keynote this morning, because he was absolutely right when he said that BlackBerry has the highest shipping score on HTML5 test.com. He is correct. 485 is probably the highest score right now for a shipping device. But if you go look to HTML5 test.com and look in some of the upcoming mobile devices, you'll see that Tizen is there at 492 right now. So we're ahead of BlackBerry for compatibility on HTML5 test.com. And another benchmark that we've been measuring ourselves against is the Ring Mark benchmark. And we are doing best in class there as well. So from a developer point of view, porting your HTML5 application to Tizen, it should just work. So the beauty of the web application environment is that we can, with this, provide an environment where you can run your application across multiple different platforms. We have what we call Tizen profiles. So we have a profile for the mobile handset. We're drafting one up for IVI right now, and we expect to have, as other profiles become a focus, we'll have custom profiles for that. But one of the common themes across all of these is that the web runtime or the web browser that you use on each of these devices that are Tizen enabled will support all of the Tizen web APIs. That's it. These APIs rely on upstream standards. So like I mentioned, we're heavily invested in W3C and others and aggressively implementing the APIs. We're adding new APIs when there is no existing APIs. So where we've looked at the APIs from W3C and we see we want to support specific features on the device that the W3C API won't support right now, we will add our own Tizen APIs, but we won't stop there. We'll actually take those and drive those back into the standards bodies. So we don't want to end up with a unique platform that you'll only write to for a Tizen app. We want to have a standard API as possible. And to that end, speaking from an Intel point of view, we are heavily invested in W3C. there's at least a dozen W3C working groups that we're participating in and driving these APIs and drafts forwards. This foil I have in the deck, I suspect it's probably preaching to the choir here when we're talking about the benefits of HTML5. But I did want to mention it is the primary development platform that we're targeting for TIZEN. We want to make sure that it works really well, really reliably, and gives you access to all the features you need for your platform. Provides a flexible distribution model, allows you to create compelling, rich multimedia user experiences and full-screen immersive, beautiful web-powered applications. We're also going out and working with many, many different third parties. We're enabling those so that you can use the tools that you know and are familiar with as part of your existing tool set. So, as you heard during the keynote, Sencha Touch will be enabled for TIZEN. And that's because we went out and reached out to Sencha earlier in the year and said, we want to make this happen. And we were able to come to an arrangement with Sencha, and they agreed to include their support for TIZEN. We're also working with other platform tools such as Accelerator and Enyo. We have support in the Intel development environment for HTML5, and we'll be providing TIZEN support in theirs as well. We're working with many aggregators out there that take HTML5 applications and put them in their catalogs, and we want to make sure that many of those are thinking about TIZEN and how to bring those to market. We're working with other infrastructure companies such as McAfee for security, because you want to have a phone handset. You want to make sure it's not going to be exposed to malware, viruses, stuff like that. Blinks is a video solution for HTML5. Monotype for fonts. We have several arrangements with game tool manufacturers. We're actually showing in the Intel booth, in the TIZEN booth this afternoon, the Havoc game engine, for example. So the idea is, as much as we can, we're going to be engaging with these companies to scale out the ability to develop TIZEN applications, so it's not us going to individual end application developers and saying, please port your device, your application to the TIZEN platform. We want to make it easy for you to just use these tools you're familiar with and click an extra button that says compile for TIZEN. One I did want to draw a little bit of attention to is a company called AppBacker. They have a service that they provide where they will rate your application for you. So if you have an application you've already written for the Google Store or for the Chrome Store, you can submit that to AppBacker, and they will provide a score of based on the quality of the application, how well it's rated, what services it provides, and that will be used to leverage, to provide that information to other aggregators. So, and to build your reputation in the TIZEN store. So, if I go on to the next point, you'll see, you can go to AppBacker, submit your application to them, and they will give you a score back based on how they rate your application. This will then be used as a tool for weeding out, the weaker applications from the better applications, and then as they are proliferated around the aggregators, they will be able to use this score to highlight the more high-quality applications, and then obviously those will get better distribution deals. But if you are writing an application that is on AppBacker's hit list, they have some criteria that they're looking for, and if your application meets that, they may actually give you incentives to port your application to TIZEN, cash incentives, cash in hand. So it might be worthwhile checking out with AppBacker and saying, is my application something that you're looking for TIZEN? Because they may give you some money to port it directly there. So talking about stores, The Tizen store is open for submissions. The URL is written up there. So you can go there and submit your application, and if it goes through the validation process, and it will be given a Tizen ID in the store. And once you have that, you can actually then use that to enter the Tizen app challenge that we have running through to the beginning of November. And we have over $4 million worth of prizes on offer there for various application categories. I think it's nine different categories with 54 prizes. And you can submit your app ID to that competition for a chance of winning some of those. And I wanted to highlight, for the top 10 ranked HTML5 applications, they will be eligible for an additional $50,000 prize. So if you've got a really good application, I definitely recommend getting your application into the competition. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Tizen architecture, just to give you a taste for it. If you want to get more information about the Tizen architecture, there is a lot of material available on the web on tizen.org. But to give you a pointer about where you can look for this stuff. So, for the most part, I think you can see it okay. The Tizen architecture is basically, we're focusing, you've heard me talk a lot about the web stack. We also support native applications on Tizen. The stack is very familiar to anyone that's looked at an operating system stack. At the highest level, we have the application interface, and on that is built on top of the web framework or the native framework, which sits on a middleware layer of services that provide the OS. And on the bottom of that, the Linux kernel and device drivers. So there's basically two paths, depending on how your application is written, whether it's a web application or a native application, you follow through. But at the highest level, if you're just developing applications, all the information you're going to need is going to be on, you can't see it up the top, but it's on developer.tizen.org. If you're actually getting down into the lower level and writing services and tinkering with the OS itself, all of that information is available to you at source.tizen.org. So like I said, this is all open source. You can go and look at the code at any level of the integration. So again, the Tizen OS web framework accommodates and leverages most up-to-date web technologies. We want to be on the cutting edge. We want to make it as functional as possible for you. Provides a large number of HTML5 functionalities defined by W3C and other standard groups. And also new device APIs, which gives you capabilities that you wouldn't normally have. And some of you may be wondering about, are we opening up too much? By making device APIs available to people, are we exposing ourselves to security threats? And I think Ted's going to touch on this a little bit in his section, but all the device functionalities are provided with a very strict rule-based security control system around it that restricts malicious use of the device APIs. And I think Ted will be touching on that in a bit more detail about how that works. Similarly, in parallel, we have the Tizen OS native framework, which is composed of systems services and a native namespace across various domains, providing over 10,000 open APIs. If anyone's familiar with the BARDA operating system, you'll recognize these namespaces, functionality. It's very similar to the BARDA operating system. And in addition to the Tizen APIs, it also provides a gateway into some of the popular standard open source libraries such as glib, libstandard C++, libxml, OpenGLAS, OpenAudio, and Open Multiprocessing. And I think at this point, I'm going to talk about the SDK. So if you go to tizen.org, you will see very prominently listed links to the SDK, which you can go and download to get you started with building for Tizen. The SDK has all of the tools, documentation, and resources necessary to create Tizen web apps or Tizen native apps. And we have the IDE, which is based on Eclipse. We have a command line interface for building and for pushing applications over to the target platform. We have a UI builder, a WYSIWYG drag and drop way of creating applications. There's a web simulator and a web emulator. The web simulator is just for HTML5 applications. The TIZEN emulator would allow you to actually run native applications as well in an emulated environment on the development PC or Linux or Mac platform. And the application development cycle is very familiar to anyone that's been developing software. So you develop it using the IDE and SDK, or your own tools, whichever you prefer. If you have a favorite IDE or editor that you want to use, you can use that. And then debug it on the simulator or the emulator, or if you're lucky enough to actually have a device, you can use that. Then once you're happy with having debugged it, you can use the packaging tool to package up the application. For an HTML5 application, that would be packaged as a widget file, WGT, W3C standard. If you're using a native application, then it would be a .tpk file, a TIZEN package file. And either of these you can submit to the TIZEN application store. I wanted to give a quick bit of flavor for how the progress of the TIZEN SDK has gone forward. So in April of last year, of 2011, we had September of 2011, we had a SDK Alpha 1.0. In spring of 2012, we had the final 1.0 release. The following year, in May, we had the 2.0 release, February, sorry. And as we've gone forward, we've provided more functionality, more capabilities in each release. So the 2.0 built on top of the 1.0, it provided more APIs. It was the first time that we provided native support. It provided additional TIZEN device APIs, such as Bluetooth and NFC support. And we actually updated the web runtime to a WebKit 2-based engine. Like I said, the native framework was first introduced in 2.0, including such features as background apps, IP push, and text-to-speech. And we updated a lot of the reference applications in the SDK and also improved all the documentation and reference example code. And building on the momentum from the February release, we did a 2.1 release in May, just in time for the second TIZEN Developer Conference earlier this year. And this was a much more minor release, but added extra web APIs for data synchronization, push messaging and notifications, information from the system. We implemented the content security policy and interact sharing mechanisms. We provided an antivirus framework, so working with McAfee, provided a framework so you could plug in not just the McAfee engine, but any virus engine that you wanted to port to TIZEN. We updated the TIZEN radio interface layer and telephony framework, and also what they call a web dynamic box, live box, which is a GUI interface concept that we'll hopefully see in the final product when they start shipping. There were some minor changes to the GUI, larger icon size, and some updates to the WYSIWYG IDE. And right now, we are working on TIZEN 2.2. There is a 2.2 beta published on tizen.org right now. We were hoping to see the 2.2 published in time for this conference, but unfortunately, it didn't quite make it in time. So we're still expecting to see later on this month. The major change for this one is very minor tweaks, but we changed the way it handles the buttons at the bottom of the screen, so that rather than having them as soft buttons on the display, they're going to be moved down to be physical hard buttons to free up the screen real estate. And there were also some minor updates to the native API and the web API. I think at that point, I'm going to pass on to Ted to talk to you about some of the things that you might encounter as you use Tizen from a Sencha developer point of view.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Actually, we'll leave it on this one. Yeah. So I can do the rest of the slide. So I wanted to go through a couple of things. Like as a developer stepping onto a new platform, it's useful to understand what's different. Clearly, there are things in Tizen that are distinctively different from a web platform point of view. And when you begin writing apps, it's really essential to understand those differences and be able to know, hey, why and what is different about developing for Tizen versus writing a standard web app. I'm going to go through those items, specifically how the firewall and the manifest affect things. Also, the fact that there are native JavaScript APIs to get access to about 75–80% of the operating system. You can do very low-level things, like you can request that the operating system install an app. You can listen on Bluetooth. You can do some very, very interesting things that are not available on other platforms. Also going through signing and permissions, because those affect API access in terms of if your app is running hosted, if it's running local, or if it's signed in a particular way, you have deeper or lesser API access within the operating system. And then I'll cover basically how you can actually integrate native apps into the web runtime, because it's not okay not to have, you have this great native capability, but you can write web apps that actually bridge and talk to native code to do high performance computations or any type of graphics or the like. And then I thought I would just actually go through showing you what the app building process is like in the context of Sencha development. I've written a few apps with it, and it works great. So talking about the firewall and the manifest, one of the things that's very different is Tizen has a local firewall. It actually has a system running at the kernel level that is checking permissions based on what you access. So if your application reaches out and talks to a third-party domain, that domain actually has to be listed in the manifest. And if it is not, the operating system blocks the request from even going out. That's very different than what we have in browsers today. So you can't arbitrarily add in Google Analytics without knowing the implication of Google Analytics. What URLs is Google Analytics going to call? What are the dependency chains? So it's actually really, really difficult to do to have cross-site scripting problems with apps on this platform. And because the APIs are exposing a deeper set of functionality, you have to really be careful about what JavaScript is being injected into an app and what is there for taking advantage of. Some of the things just to keep in mind, it's a whitelist, so you actually have to list all of the APIs. There are also new permissions that have been added to allow you to change the base URL and navigate. So if you're doing OAuth login and you happen to be bounced to Facebook, you do Facebook login or to a Twitter login, you have to actually list the OAuth domain and subdomain in the permissions in your package to allow them to go to those domains and then come back. It's an interesting challenge. It's very different than what I'm used to thinking about domains. Also, the platform has implemented the content security policy. So if a domain or an API has a posted security policy, when you actually make the request to the domain, it'll check to see if there's a security policy, and then it'll implement that security policy on the network calls that you make. So it's the local firewall is almost the inverse of a CSP, if you know what I mean. So other than that, sometimes in the manifest you can also do things like app cache and other security policy, but these are just some of the settings and properties that are available. So there's really two sets of APIs you can think about. Everything that you know and use within the web stack is available. And that includes WebSockets, It includes all of the nice new HTML5 features. Great. But anything that is not standard will be in the TIZEN namespace. So there's a global object. It's basically TIZEN dot. And then you will have APIs for accessing, setting up alarms, how to install, uninstall, and prompt users for applications, download, secure elements, packaging. You can actually listen on the Bluetooth. You can turn on Bluetooth. You can actually listen to it as an API. And you can do some very interesting things. And these are pretty abnormal. I don't think I've seen any platform support this depth, especially in JavaScript, in terms of API access. And because that's given, the security really has to be tighter around what apps can do and how they do it. Also, because it's really manifest-driven, some of the security, the user gets to see exactly what your app is going to do when they install it. They can look at the URLs that things are going to call. They can look at what APIs you're permissioned to use. And you actually have to include permissions to access some of these APIs. So in that case, you're looking at a very transparent app platform and a way to access it. So API calls are actually dependent on signing, and there's really three levels of it. In the web runtime, I kind of think about it, there's three different types of apps. You can have a hosted application. The hosted application is simply a manifest and an icon. And the manifest says, this URL is where my app is hosted. You can take any Sencha Touch app, post it publicly. You can create a manifest file, point to that URL, run the packager, it'll create a widget file, install that widget file, and it will open up that app. It will be running in the remote domains context. So in that case, there really aren't any APIs outside of the web stack that are available. Because it's hosted and because it's remote, you're limited in what you can do. Now, with the same process, you can add a file system so that your HTML contents, your JavaScript libraries and frameworks are local. And in that case, you simply point the index.html document to point, you create an index.html document locally, add that to the manifest, and now your application is operating local. And if you sign that application, meaning you just create the widget file, you have deeper access to the APIs. If you happen to be a carrier, you can actually sign an app as a carrier and get deeper access to the APIs. So if you're creating apps to turn on particular network settings, to manage a whole class of things that need deeper access from a carrier point of view. So pre-installed apps and the like. So really, this is the way of the native app. You can have applications talk to other applications, and because of that, you can actually have what is referred to as a plugin, which is a native app in a web application, and they can talk to one another, and there's bridging to be able to catch events. The way that it works is you actually just listen for data, and you have a basic shared data model where you can send messages over the wire. And so you'll just sort of make an announcement, and the other app will, if they're listening, they will catch it. Very similar to Intents, but you can send data between two apps. The I/O over this is actually pretty fast, so you can actually get nice UI and kind of data flow between apps. But that allows you to call something with JavaScript, have it execute a native code, and then return data back to you. And so they're really operating completely separate as applications, but from a UI perspective, they'll be in the same area. And you can also instantiate them as a surface as well. So next, I want to build an app in 2 minutes. And that's kind of where we'll switch machines and kind of go back over. See if I can wake it up. Let me enter my password, and we're good. So this is what a manifest looks like. It actually follows the widget, the W3C widget format for for any type of app. It's just XML. And inside of the app, you'll simply have a widget element. You give it a specific ID. You then document it as an application, give it the required information, and then you have settings for how you want the viewport to be set and the like. But this basically sets up the application and the application context. And in this one, you have TIZEN content, and so this would be a domain. This is a remotely hosted app. So this app would simply be, I would click on the icon on the desktop installed. It would open up the web runtime and execute the remote app in the sandbox of a remote application. Actually, taking a look at an application that's local, quite a bit different. In this case, the content is specified as local index.html. And so from a Sencha perspective, what you should see is all this is going to do is run a local index.html file. The contents and how you build your app is your business from there on out. How do you want to architect it, how you want to have your JavaScript load, libraries, et cetera, is all there. And as far as integrating with Sencha, what I have here, let me see. This is a Sencha application that I've been working on called Uncorked. It's for wine tasting. Let me actually show you what the app looks like. So again, running web app in a desktop browser, but you get the support in terms of taking photographs and the like. You take photographs, you add it in, you can save it in terms of during a wine tasting, et cetera. So fairly boring app, but actually uses the media capture for capturing photographs, and you can also take video. You simply call an input tag and specify camera or video or audio, and you actually get the audio input prompts, and it'll actually load the application for media capture. And then you'll get references back to the actual data file. So easy to capture images, easy to do it, but it's just integrated into the web side of form input. So let's actually create an app, and I think I'm probably over my 2 minutes for creating app, but we'll kind of reset the egg timer and go from here. So new TIZEN project, new web project. I'll just select basic, my fast app, and I simply hit finish. It'll actually create all of the package. It'll blow everything onto the. Hold on, let's see here. Did it? Oh, there it is. And so what you end up with is a distinctive set of default folders, a CSS folder, an images folder, and a JavaScript folder. Inside of those right now are just simply style sheet, index.html, and main.js. And index.html simply contains viewport settings. Sorry for the size here. But viewport settings, style sheet, import the JavaScript, go. And so in this case, creating a Sencha app, I would simply rip all this out, drop the framework into the folder, and presto, we're off and running. And then it's standard Sencha web development. If you want to call APIs, the API access is simply TIZEN dot. Everything returns a promise. It's pretty straightforward. There's nothing, even in the native APIs in TIZEN, you'll get patterns that are exuded in the W3C standards. So even the native APIs that are non-standard operate in a standard-based way, and they're predictable in how they operate. So once you actually create the project, you'd actually go ahead and do the compilation step. This is Eclipse. There are command line features for this, but all I do is just come down and say build project. It actually goes through the process of creating a zip file, signing that, turning it into a WGT, and now actually I have my fast app.widget, and then I simply will use a command line tool set to install that on a device and run it. And so if you've developed apps before, the fact that there's tooling in Tizen is actually really nice. You're free to edit and build your applications anyway, but I would strongly suggest using the packaging, the signing and deployment inside of the Tizen IDE. It's actually really nice. So with that, I'd actually like to just kind of turn it over to questions, and we can both kind of answer. Do we switch back over to the other?
So yeah, I just wanted to do a little brief summary and say, reminder of the 4 key pillars that we have around Tizen. The focus on HTML5 leadership, the fact that it's a truly open platform, the focus on innovation and differentiation, and the support we have from the industry leaders. So that's what's going to make Tizen different and unique from other operating systems out there. So the takeaway is, Tizen software platform is a robust, flexible, open source platform, highlighting the best-in-class HTML5 support. It provides a set of tools and defines working processes for developers to collaborate on the OS and on application development. And as you all heard in the keynotes, Sencha is bringing support of Tizen to Sencha Touch. So we're very much looking forward to seeing that. I did also want to say we have some additional sources of information if you want to find out more about Tizen. We have another presentation tomorrow by Daniel, who'll be giving you a taste for brains, developing for a taste of brains. And that will be the 10:30 time slot in Northern Hemisphere E4. We have several experts down in the Tizen Pavilion, and we can talk to you at great length about whatever your questions are on Tizen there. If you want to go and look online, the website to go to is tizen.org. We also have more information at source.tizen.org, documentation, and developer.tizen.org, but they're all linked to from tizen.org if you start there. Reminder, we are doing session evaluations for all these presentations, so please log into the app, on the mobile app, and rate this session. Hope you found it useful. And tweet or tag any posts about Tizen on SenchaCon or #Tizen as well, please. And with that, we'll do questions and answers.
Perfect.
Yes? So we're getting this question a lot today. There aren't any devices currently available commercially. There are some reference software development platforms that we've given away at the Tizen Developer Conference last June this year for developers, and we'll continue to give those away at key Tizen app boot camps and workshops throughout the rest of this year in various places around the world.
This is what the reference device looks like.
But commercial platform, we're still waiting. We expect Samsung to launch a commercial product later on this year.
Can I ask a related question?
Sure.
Tizen install an ARM device like Raspberry Pi or whatnot, or is Intel going to release a similar sort of headless unit where you can install it and plug HDMI into your device?
So right now, the initial product announcements, or the announcements that we've made so far are all rolled around Samsung, and that will be an ARM-based product.
And then a random follow-up question. You mentioned the difficulties security of signing, not signed, developer signed, candidate signed. And you also mentioned potentially to drive a refrigerator or other esoteric device. So in that scenario, if I were to come up with my own custom hardware and I want to deploy outside the context of the phone, and I got my own custom I/O or whatnot, am I then deploying as a carrier in that scenario?
So if you wanted to develop your own device, I would suggest getting in touch with the Tizen Association, and they can provide guidance about which profiles to use and how to influence the direction of Tizen to support that device going forward.
If you're implementing custom hardware, I'd imagine you can sign at a level that would be, but it depends where you're publishing the app into what ecosystem.
Why does it help Tizen?
It's actually very difficult to come up with a name for a product that isn't trademarked or otherwise encumbered. So it was a name that the marketing company came up with as something unique and different that we could build a brand around.
Sounds cool.
It's short. It works well. Yeah.
Any plans to support OpenMax or HTTP live streaming?
Any plans to support Open?
OpenMax?
I'm not familiar with OpenMax.
It's promise is OpenGL media for the libraries and stuff.
So we GStreamer is used on the Tizen architecture. So if there's a GStreamer plugin, that should be very easy to incorporate. But I don't believe it's part of the stack by default right now. Any other questions? If you think of anything after the event, come down, talk to us. We'll be down at the Pavilion Evangelist Lounge for the rest of the session. And in fact, come down and visit us there. We have T-shirts to give away. We have, I think we have a few USB sticks with the SDK on it as well. We have little fans to keep you cool. We have some flyers for the app challenge as well. But just come down and ask us questions, find out everything you want to know about Tizen. And you can also enter a giveaway competition for gamer headsets and GoPro cameras. Thank you very much.
Thanks.